Hey strong people, it's Smitty here. Join me as I drink my iced mocha and I'm going to recap my performance and experiences at the Arnold Classic 2019. So I came into this comp feeling really strong, really confident. The events, they kind of suited me. There's always one or two things that everyone's maybe not the best at in the country. Regardless, I went into this comp really wanting to win, planning to win. Preparations went fantastic. I'd cut down from, I was 88 kilos at the last comp in January, so I cut 4 kilos over the about 2.5 months. I was weighing 84, the weight cut went perfectly, so no issues there. My goal was to come top 3 in every event. I thought that would be enough to win the Arnold, as long as I could maybe win the deadlift event and win the Viking press, or maybe top 2 on the Viking press, top 3 and everything else. That was my goal going in. I trained very similar to how I always train. So I do train using the conjugate method. So we have the 2 max effort days, the 2 dynamic effort days, and I add in a 5th strongman day where I practice the events coming up at the next competition. It was going to be a super competitive class, but I was coming in feeling really confident and really strong. No issues or injuries, no niggles. Preparations, it was like the main focus of my life. So I was training, I'm not going to say as hard as ever, because there's been times where I've trained multiple times a day for many hours. This was just maybe 90 minutes, 5 times a week. But recovery was a huge priority. So Alira and I were going to Cairo, Mayo, stretching, a beach. We went to the beach every Sunday. The P3 sports recovery. Diet was a huge thing. We were both cutting a little bit of weight anyway, so diet was massive. We were really making the effort to cook as much food as possible so that we were prepared. And it really did take over my life for the last 6 or 7 weeks. I've noticed since the comp finished, I'm a lot more relaxed with I go to bed and my meals aren't ready for tomorrow and whatever. I just buy food throughout the day. Or it gets to 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I'm nowhere near ready for bed, so that I can get my 6 or 7 hours sleep, and I'm just like, whatever, I just won't get 6 or 7 hours sleep tonight. Whereas the lead up to this competition, I was making sure I was in bed to get enough sleep, and like I said, recovery and food, everything was a massive priority. So I did everything I could. I ended up placing 3rd at this competition, if you don't already know. So this video, I'm going to recap the first 3 events of the competition, and that way I can do a part 2, which will be the second 2 events, and that way they'll be shorter videos. And in part 2, I want to go a little bit more into the mindset of what happened and why I came 3rd. It's been the main topic of conversation this week when people asked how I went, is also how am I feeling about it and things like that. So I wanted to leave some space to not only talk about my performance and how I trained and how I went, but also my mindset after the comp, and maybe other people can learn from it, because it's been super confusing for me, not knowing how to feel or what to say or how to act or anything. So I'll leave that for part 2. My God, I've already talked more than I thought. All right. So event 1 was yoke. You go 10 meters with the yoke, 10 meters with a frame, and then 10 meters back with the frame, 10 meters with the yoke to finish. So 40 meters covered in total. My weights were 290 for the yoke and 220 for the frame. And here's the event. So I finished that one with an official time of 30.47 seconds, which was enough for first place, 1.4 seconds ahead of second place, so a very small margin. Very surprised to win that event. Obviously, I said I was just trying to get top 3, so I wasn't planning on winning that event. Yoke is an okay movement for me. Frame or farmers are normally not so great. Grip issues, as well as normally the farmers are kind of smacking the ground because I'm so short with long arms. So the frame being a bit wider means that I was off the ground a bit more, so I could actually move at a better pace. The equipment was amazing. That 170 kilo stand-up submit yoke feels a lot lighter than their 135 kilo yoke, and it feels a lot lighter than the yoke that I train on with the same weights. So the frame was nice and grippy. The yoke felt light. Training for this event, so the last 3 weeks I trained for this event the same way most people train for it. Just doing the run. I did a few runs with, I think, what's this weight here? 100. So I did a few runs with, say, 250 and 260 into 200. Training very much the same everyone else would. So this would be on my max effort day. That would be on my max effort day. I'll do that on the heavy day. And I actually stopped deadlifting heavy 3 weeks out as well. So I didn't do heavy deadlifts and the heavy yoke and frame medley on the same day 3 weeks out. So I took all heavy deadlifts out and I just went heavy on this event. The reason I did that was because I didn't want to do heavy deadlifts and heavy yoke and just risk hurting my back or just risk doing too much with my body. I knew that my deadlift would be strong enough to win or get top 2 or something like that. So I stopped doing heavy deadlifts, but I still did Romanian deadlifts and good mornings and deadlift work, just without putting that extra massive strain on my upper and lower back. So this proved to be a pretty good decision, I thought. So it's a lot more focused than I'd normally put on my yoke event. I also did yoke and frame medley on my dynamic effort day. So I'd use about 180 to 200 kilos on the yoke, so extremely light compared to comp weight. And then maybe 180, I think, was a lot of the time, 80 per hand for the frame. So it was just speed work and I'd get about 4 sets done. A great way to work on fitness. And I was finishing them, I was always trying to finish them in under 30 seconds. I think that was a really good strategy because I ended up finishing in 30 seconds. That was the time I needed to win, and I kind of guessed that in training, so good for me. Before that though, so I was training yoke before that 3 weeks. I was doing chain yoke for 3 weeks just to start getting used to the movement. Yoke for me is a really damaging event. I think it is for most people, but if you don't have great posture, slightly rounded in the shoulders, and you're grabbing the yoke like this, and you got a heavy weight pushing you down like this with that curve, you're just going to pull up pretty bad from it. It's going to affect all your other training. It's going to affect your mobility for upper body movements. It's going to affect your deadlift because you're already working your lower back so hard. So I did 3 weeks of chain yoke before I got under the regular yoke. Prior to that, I hadn't done any yoke since Vic's Strongest, which was in November. So it had been about 2 months of just no yoke at all. I really believe, I'm going to make this number up, once you've done a yoke maybe about 30 times, made up number, so you know what belt you like or where to wear your belt, you know where you like your feet, what shoes, you know what grip you like, you know your breathing. Not that you're a master at it or anything, but you know what you're doing under the yoke. I think you're going to see more benefit bringing up your hamstrings, making sure that your trunk, lower back and upper back is getting stronger. I think you'll see more benefit doing that rather than just training yoke every week. I know that's definitely true for me and most people that I've had contact with. We just can't do yoke week after week after week and get better. Although I hadn't hit yoke for 2 months, and even before Vic's, it had been like a whole year. Pushing the good mornings, pushing the stiff-legged deadlifts, pushing the box squats, lots of rows. We did lots of shrugs and lots of other types of carry. Building that muscle in those positions or in those body parts, and then training them how to get stronger on the yoke. So you still have to do yoke to get better at it. But I would really, if anyone's new to strongman, if you're an average size guy, anywhere between 80 and 100 kilos, and you're dealing with 250 to 300 kilo yokes, you don't want to be doing that shit week after week. You might get away with it, probably won't, and it's just going to affect all your other lifts negatively. So you have to pick and choose what you're recovering from. I chose to push the yoke a bit harder this year than I normally would, and it paid off, but recovery was a massive option, and I took something out. I did heaps of yoke and a lot of frame and grip work, but I took the heavy deadlifts out as well, so I wasn't just adding in more stuff, and I think that's why I came into the comp feeling really fresh and really strong. All right, I'll shut up about the yoke. That was the first place, so really surprisingly good start today. And then we went on to the second event, which was the max frame deadlift. All right, these 3 lifts here must be 320, then a 340, and then a final lift here of 360 kilos. This is me psyching up the audience. Did you see that? I might even try and replay it. So this was a 360 kilo deadlift for the win. Go me. First place, I was expecting to win the deadlift. I guess I didn't quite know how that frame was going to feel or the number that I was going to get or how the other guys would go. It moves quite well on the video, but I was really hunched as everyone's going to be on a max frame deadlift. Pulled up pretty bad from that one. I'm still stretching it out, still feel pretty bad. Obviously very happy to get another event win, and it worked out really well points wise on this one with a lot of ties, a lot of people on 300. So I was on 360, one person on 340, Rhett finished on 320, and then 4 people I think tied on 300, so that worked out really well points wise for me. Training for this event, so again I train using the conjugate method, so every Thursday for me is a max effort lower body. Some of the lifts that I hit during this prep, first week here, this is about a 220 I believe. Quite easy, but I was sick and had a headache. And then by the end of the prep, that was a 280. 280 frame deadlift. You can see that was, I think, a little bit higher than what we had to lift on the day and a lot harder. On this trap bar, I believe this was 309 kilos, around 310. I have to do the maths later. On a different trap bar, I hit 319. Trap bar with bands, that was about 240 on the bar, and the bands added at least 100 at the top, so locking out 340. And then a max effort box squat, that was a PB, 180 on the bar, the bands add at least 70 kilos at the top. So I'm always excited when I get a PB on my box squat. So I really believe for me it has a massive carryover to my deadlifts, all my static lifts, and especially stones. So there's a few of my max effort lifts that I hit. I tried using a couple of different trap bars. As you saw, I pulled from different heights on the frame deadlifts, so sometimes I had the 3 plates set up, other times I just make it 2. But I trained that pretty normal. This is why I've trained for close to 3 years now. I max out on something every Thursday and I try and get a PB. If it's something that I've done before, I try and get a PB. A lot of this stuff I hadn't maxed out on those trap bars before, so I was setting new records, which I will beat in the future leading into the next competition. So the deadlift training was very normal for me. Most of the work for this deadlift has been done over the last 8 years through deadlifting and all the variations. Event 3, the Viking press. I got 11 reps with 105 kilos and I'll let it play.
Come on.
Down, good rep. Down, good rep.
Good.
Down, good rep. Down, good rep. Down, good rep.
Keep going.
Down,
Going.
good rep.
You need more.
Keep going, speed. Down, good rep.
Come on, come on.
Yes, speed. Down, good rep.
Come on. You need at least 4 more. Up. Come on. Come on.
Go, speed.
Up. Come on, 2 more. Come on. Up. Yes. Keep going. Up.
So that was actually equal first with Carl on that event. We both got 11 reps. Interestingly enough, we both tied on the Viking press back at Northeast Strongest Man. That extra rep, if I'd gotten that, I would have finished the day in 2nd place, because I was actually only half a point behind Carl. I was in 3rd, he was in 2nd. But in saying that, I'm sure he went for his 12th rep as well, so he could just say the same thing. He would have maybe got 12. There's no point with the ifs and buts, is there? There's just no point saying if I'd got this. But I'll say it anyway. So training wise for me for the Viking press, I actually trained quite heavy on the implement that we've got at gym. Week 1, I kind of maxed out or tested where I was and got 120 kilos. A good 8 weeks later, I got 140 kilos for 3 reps. So that was massive progression, I thought. This is the 140 for 3. Oh no, 140 for 2.75, sorry, I lied. But basically I was doing lots of reps as everyone was, but I was training it pretty heavy. I was doing a lot of heavy singles first, like this one here, and then I'd back it off and do a few sets of 8 to 15 reps. I knew it was going to be about 10 reps that would win it, 10 to 15, and I was correct. But for the most part it was pretty normal training. The implement that I used at our gym, you can see a wider stance was a lot better, and elbows forward. Friday, which is my max effort upper body day, I'd max out on a upper body lift, a shoulder press or a split jerk, and then I'd go into the Viking press, build up to a heavy single, and then back it off and do some back off sets for reps. And I would just make that number up, like the weight that I chose. I'd make that up based on how I was feeling, if I was having a good day or a bad day. So it wasn't linear when I was just adding weight every week or anything like that. Sometimes I dropped the weight off, but I'd be hitting sets of 15 to 20, and then if I was feeling good, I'd go a bit heavier, and I'd hit, sets of 6 to maybe 12 reps, something like that. On the dynamic effort day, so Tuesday for me, I also did a lot of, I don't have any footage of it, but I did a lot of banded Viking press. Didn't film it because I didn't want to put up any footage to let anyone know that I was doing it, but I found that really effective. We attached a band to the Viking press, and I did 8 sets of 3 or 10 sets of 2, just to improve my technique and force output, and I found that really beneficial in the beginning weeks. 3 weeks out from the comp, we went to Iron Rev to practice on the actual implement that we'll be using, the stand to submit Viking press, and I went in hoping, maybe I'll get 10 or 15 reps, and fuck me, that didn't happen at all. This thing was so much wider and so much heavier. I'll let this play through, but basically I could hit 1 rep at comp weight, and I just could not fuck off helicopter. I got 1 rep at comp weight, and it was just that painful. The rack position was painful, and the lockout position was so painful on my rear delts that I just could not string together 2 reps. Anyway, here's some footage of me whinging and missing reps.
That's why it takes 2 hours.
So after that, I went into panic mode. I kind of felt like my chances of winning the Arnold, if I couldn't win or get top 2 on the Viking press, there was just no way I was going to win the Arnold. He got stuck right into my rear delts. It was very painful. I whinged the whole time. 4 days later, we went back to Iron Rev again, and I tried this different grip that you'll see. I tried the reverse grip, and I was able to string together, I can't remember, 3 to 6 reps kind of thing. It felt heavy and hard, but it wasn't painful anymore. So that was my phone just cut out, so I don't know where I was up to. Normal grip. I was able to string together reps. It felt heavy and it felt hard, but it wasn't painful. Whereas week 1, back in the orange shirt, in the Dragon Ball Z shirt, it was heavy and hard, but it was also freaking painful. I didn't know how I was going to go. So we went to Iron Rev quite a few times, and each time we went there, it got slightly better. It was less painful, and I was able to just string together more reps. Something happened to my left shoulder there, and then the final week, was it 10 days? I think 10 days out from the competition, the last time I trained heavy Viking, I got a set of 10 at comp weight. I was pretty confident going into the competition that I could get 15. Well, that's what I was telling myself, that with the deload and the atmosphere and everything, that 15 reps was possible. And as I said before, 11 reps is what I ended up with on the day. Obviously went to failure. There wasn't any more in the tank, but I still feel that it did feel light enough that I think 13, 14, 15 reps was possible. Holding it at the top for the down call, we had to hold the down call for quite a long time. Fatigued the shoulders a little bit, and that's my excuse really. It was about as hard as training. I didn't get a lot out of the deload on that event there. So as far as training for the Viking, extra things I was doing, so I had 2 upper body days a week where I was doing dumbbell shoulder pressing and machine shoulder pressing, triceps 3 times a week, going absolutely nuts with that. I still found this much more of a lower body movement. I think my shoulders are strong in this neutral position, which is why I was able to get away with getting an event win and a good score on this event. But I trained my glutes 3 times a week, high reps and all the heavy stuff as well. Glute ham raises, a lot of back extensions, good mornings for the lower back. At the end of most of my training sets, my lower back and glutes would be so much more fatigued than my shoulders. The other boys are definitely probably stronger in the upper body, but I really think I was able to use my lower body a lot more to get those extra few reps out. That's 3 events down. 3 event wins. The Viking press was a tie. That was another one where a lot of people were tied for reps. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 people tied with 6 reps. Carl and I tied on 11, 1 person on 5, 1 on 4, 1 on 1, and about 4 people didn't manage a rep. So that gave me another handy lead. I can't remember, but I think I was about 6.5 points ahead. And I'm going to leave the video there. If only I could leave the Arnold If only I could leave the Arnold there. That was it. We just have to do 3 events and I won them all. So next week I'll film part 2, which will be power stairs and Atlas stones, and I'll chat a little bit about those. If you don't know the story yet, then you're in for a real treat. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about training or programming or how to train for any of these type of events, and I'll give you my 2 cents. See you guys soon. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Watching.
Victorian Strength Club.
And I just made it into the front door into